So, Steve, tell me what's going on.
Well, first off, thanks for having me here.
Sure, thanks for being here.
There are a few places in this city that I enjoy because I feel like I'm at like a shrine, and this is one of them. So when I look around as somebody who's been collecting autographs, memorabilia since I was a kid, I really can appreciate this because it's almost as if I wasn't in radio and I made real money. This is the kind of stuff I would like to have invested in years ago. So I'm happy you did it because, again, as someone who has been appreciating so much in the sports memorabilia business over the years and entertainment and everything else you've accumulated, Doug, I can appreciate this as a collector because you have just an incredible display.
Yeah, well, thanks. So I read in your bio or somewhere that your favorite teams are Mets.
So I'm originally from New York.
I know.
Born in Brooklyn. My dad grew up being a New York Giants football fan, baseball fan, and he rooted for the Knicks and Rangers because living in New York. So we moved here in '78, and originally I was a Yankee fan because how could you not be a Yankee fan in the late '70s?
How can you not be a fan if you're from Brooklyn?
So interestingly enough, a lot of Brooklyn Dodger fans either stayed Dodger fans or became Met fans because when Brooklyn lost the Dodgers in '57, there was no real baseball until '62 when the Mets came around, and Brooklyn was a National League town, not an American League town. And most Brooklynites will tell you there's no way they could ever root for the Yankees because they're beloved Dodgers and the Yankees beat them so many times. So they waited 5 years, and then when the Mets came around in '62, a lot of those Brooklyn fans became Mets fans. Now, my dad grew up in Brooklyn as a Giants fan, which is rare because you don't usually see that very often, but his favorite player was Willie Mays. Would always tell me stories about, as a kid going to the Polo Grounds, Ebbets Field, and the old Yankee Stadium, and just how great it was being growing up in the '50s because you had Willie Mays, Duke Snider, and Mickey Mantle, and the arguments were always who's the best center fielder in New York, and it would get heated because you're talking about three superstars.
Who do you vote for?
Between those three, I would probably say Mays just because of his defensive value as well as his power, and I always wonder how many home runs he would have hit had the Giants not moved to Candlestick because the wind took away so many home runs. If Mickey Mantle doesn't get injured and doesn't hurt his legs early in his career and has to basically play hobbled with a bum knee his whole career, he probably wins that title because he had speed in addition to his power that people didn't realize because obviously that speed cut down in the '60s when his body started to break down. Duke Snider, to me, is still the third best of the three. Beloved Brooklyn Dodger, terrific power hitter, but Duke didn't really have the defensive abilities that Mays had, and hitting-wise was great, but, Mantle and Mays are just on a different level.
So you're Brian Cashman. What deal do you give Judge?
You pay the man. Because if you don't pay him, somebody else is.
Yeah.
And I would say...
Is he going to get 500?
I don't think so. I don't think Aaron Judge needs 500. I don't think he wants 500. If you give Aaron Judge 400 for 10 years, make him a $40 million man, he's pretty happy. And who knows what the Yankees decide to do? Maybe interestingly enough, if I'm GM, I would go max dollars for a shorter period. I think that one thing we're learning in baseball is when you sign guys to 10, 15-year contracts, their bodies are going to break down and you're not going to enjoy the end of that deal. Look at Pujols and how that contract when he signed with the Angels, how bad that turned into. And other guys that, you think you're getting a great deal, but they're not the same player as they age. So if I'm the Yankees, I probably try to throw 8 years, $320 million at Judge. So you give him $40 million a year for the next 8 years. That way, you've got him probably throughout the rest of the prime of his career. And by the time he hits his mid-30s, and then you can worry about going in another direction or signing him at a discount.
Do you have some connection to the Cohens? No, to Sid and Andy's family. Interestingly
enough, I met Andy for the first time in the mid-'80s. He came to what was then the Jewish Community Center, talked baseball with us, showed us this killer picture that he had of Lou Gehrig that was autographed, talked about how he knew Babe Ruth and what it was like playing in New York in the 20s. And I got hooked because as a kid, you think about the stories. You don't get these kind of stories very often. Went to his house, personalized a baseball for me that I still have, even though it's faded. And then years later, when the Andy and Sid Cohen softball field opened up right outside the JCC, they were both there for the grand opening. I have both Andy and Sid on the sweet spot of a baseball that was signed
Good
that day.
for you.
So that was neat. Years later,
you don't see very many Cohen signed balls.
well, I mean, you think about it, and you don't. But then again, when you have the two of them together, probably when they were coaching at UTEP in the 60s and 70s, nobody really ever thought of getting them to autograph a baseball together.
Yeah.
So years later, when I'm at the radio station, I get a call one day from a woman named Marina who asks me about trying to give her son Andy a chance to get into sports radio. So we go to Red Lobster because that's where she wanted to go eat lunch. We go and have a nice lunch. She tells me about her son who's just graduating college. And in the conversation, she mentions that she's Andy Cohen's daughter. And I told her my story, and she really enjoyed hearing that. We, of course, bring in Andy, hire him. He works in radio, then he works in TV. And a few months after Andy, Marina comes on board and joins us in sales and marketing, and she's been with us ever since. She's still with us now.
You guys visited me on Thunderbird.
Yep.
And I gave her something. I don't remember what it was.
It was something signed, I think, a piece of...
something framed.
Framed from Andy,
Yeah.
yes.
So keeping your general... you're the GM. What are you going to do with the Lakers?
I don't know what you can do. Sometimes in sports, Doug, you get boxed in. Mm-hmm. And when you get boxed in, it's hard to get out. Mm-hmm. And when they acquired Russell Westbrook in that contract, it's almost like it's an impossible contract to move. You'd almost have to move it for another impossible contract like a Kyrie Irving. And I think if the Lakers could, they would do it in a heartbeat. I just don't think Brooklyn wants to bring in another guy that they won't be able to get rid of and move in terms of Westbrook. So I'm not sure. This one, sometimes you have to ride it out and hope that somehow, some way, the light turns on with Russ this upcoming season, and he's able to kind of block out all the distractions and play the kind of basketball that Laker fans were hoping for, and turn back the clock 5 years.
But you say the kind of basketball. What do you think about the kind of basketball that's being played today?
Don't like it.
I don't like it.
Don't like it. Don't watch it much.
Yeah.
It's difficult because if you grew up watching ball in the 60s, 70s, and of course the 80s and 90s with Jordan and the Bad Boys and Magic and Bird, and even you could even go so far as to say Shaq and Kobe with the Lakers and what they were able to do. It's just not the same anymore.
But on paper, Brooklyn versus Boston, you would say Brooklyn's going to win in 5.
Yeah.
Okay, but what Boston did is they put a body on Durant. Mm-hmm. And they played old style basketball.
They did, and look at how far old style basketball got Boston, got them to the finals,
almost all the way.
Absolutely, absolutely. Had to go up against a great Golden State team, who probably is a dynasty right now with what we see with Steph and company. But no, I'm not a fan of today's NBA. It's hard to watch. There's so much one-on-one in isolation.
There's no centers.
There's no centers. They've also gotten rid of the toughness. I didn't mind fighting.
Back in the day, the Rambus thing. Common foul.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? When McHale got him?
Yep, absolutely.
Common foul.
Absolutely. And guys would get up and they would either swing and that would be the end of that, or, they'd push around a little bit. And, again, I brought up the Bad Boys. You watched the way Detroit played in the 80s. They didn't mess around. You had Mahorn. You had Lambeer. They were tough and hard-nosed. Even Isaiah was tough.
They were. Rodman.
Absolutely, Rodman as well. And what they tried to do was they were so worried about the image of basketball, they tried to clean it up. And what they did was they took the physical play out of it right now. And it's just a different game. It's evolved. Some fans like it. It's hard for me to watch NBA basketball on a regular basis.
It is tough.
Into it.
What do you think about Tim getting in the Hall?
Long overdue.
Have you spoken to him?
Yes, I have. Matter of fact, we had Tim on when he was in El Paso a few weeks ago, doing that event with Aaron Jones. I was long advocating for Tim to be in the Hall years ago, and unfortunately, he made those comments. And even though he apologized and did everything he could to try to right the wrong, I think it's pretty obvious, just looking at how those votes went the last 8 or 9 years, that it really hurt him and set him back. But the point is, he's in. We all believe he should be in. And now you think about all the former UTEP players that are in. You've got Nate Archibald, Tim Hardaway, Don Haskins, the 66 team.
That's it.
That is it. And you know, I don't think Antonio Davis, probably just short because
not
didn't play
there
enough and not as dominant.
Yeah.
I always wonder if Tim Hardaway doesn't blow out his knee after his third season, he could go down as one of the greatest scoring point guards in the history of the NBA.
Yeah. And you know, I often wonder about Archibald here in El Paso under Haskins and Hardaway under Haskins. Did Haskins stunt their career?
I don't know.
With the way they played.
Greg Foster joined me about a month ago.
I had him a couple days ago. Thanks to you.
You're
welcome
welcome
with that.
Greg told me a great story, and that is when Tim was here at UTEP, and Greg was being recruited by UTEP, he had a guard that he played high school ball with and wanted to bring along with him, and he visited UTEP, and the Miners wanted him to sign, but at the time he told them he was going to go visit St. John's and Lou Carnesecca, and Don Haskins told him, well, look, if you go, I can't guarantee there's going to be a scholarship waiting for you. He decides to go anyway, takes the trip, doesn't get offered at St. John's, comes back and wants to come to UTEP. And at the time, they had already given his scholarship away. And he was upset, just realized he made a mistake, begged UTEP to take him, and they just wouldn't do it. And his name was Gary Payton.
Yeah.
And if you think about a backcourt in the 80s, with Gary Payton and Tim Hardaway together, I've spoken to Hardaway and I've spoken to Foster. I haven't spoken to Gary Payton about it yet, but Gary Payton would have, in Tim and Greg's opinion, given UTEP a legitimate chance to win the national championship.
Yeah.
And they believe that, as Tim said, they all would have been top 5 picks because they would have been so good that everybody, they would have been guaranteed slam dunk NBA players.
I talked to Greg about all the players that came out of Oakland around there. You know, I mean, Peyton, let's see what we can do. Sean Kemp, I think.
Yeah.
A bunch of them came out of there.
It was a hotbed.
It was a hotbed.
Yeah.
Greg was real complimentary to Peyton's kid. Thinks he's playing good basketball. Thinks Hardaway's kid's playing good basketball.
It's fun, isn't it? It's fun to see how that next generation in what they're doing. And, you know, a lot of us were always hoping that Greg's kid would have played at UTEP instead of going to Gonzaga, and then he transferred out. I think went to St. Joe's, and now he's out of basketball. We're all hoping that Tim Hardaway's son would have played at UTEP, but hard to go up against Michigan when that's calling. So,
but you bring that up. How do we recruit here?
Well, it's tough now with the NIL. It's
it is
really
tough.
difficult.
Very tough.
See, the toughest part right now about UTEP basketball is, and people don't even realize this, they haven't won an NCAA tournament game in 30 years. And since 92, when they beat Kansas and went to the Sweet 16, since 92, they've been to the NCAA tournament a total of 3 times. Once with Billy Gillespie, once with Doc Sadler, and once with Tony Barbie. So you realize that. You see, a program that has as many banners hung as we have here in El Paso at the Haskins Center, and the tradition and history, there hasn't been any tradition and history in the last 30 years. It's been really difficult. And it's almost as if right now, UTEP basketball is kind of the forgotten program around mid-major college hoops, because people don't remember, if they were around in the 80s and before, what UTEP was like.
Remember BYU coming down here?
Who could forget it? We had season tickets from '79 all the way through into the probably the 2000s with my dad. So, like everybody, grew up here watching Danny Ainge and some of the greats come here. Devin Durant and what some of those BYU players were like back. Smith was another.
But it was competitive ball.
Huge, and fans hated them. But they also hated New Mexico and Utah. The rivalries were off the charts. Toughest ticket to get, and it was loud, and the building rocked, and you had Strelzin on the PA mic getting the fans going. It was just a different time.
Totally different time. You know, we talked about the Hall of Fame. What do you think about the Baseball Hall of Fame? And I'll be specific with you. Broke my heart to see Roger Clemens come on and do a commentary show with A-Rod and the Yankees broadcaster, and to realize that guy just passed his eligibility and he's no longer eligible to be considered for the Hall.
He is. Not the traditional way. So what the Hall of Fame has
what's your stance on
periods.
that?
Well, first off, they should let them all in already. It's enough. Because in my mind, there are people within the last 10 years that have been inducted into Cooperstown who, even though they might not have tested positive or had, they're still very much linked to steroids. Yeah, 100%.
Come on.
100%. And there's rumors about Piazza and Bagwell, even Biggio, and Ivan Rodriguez. There's so many. And it's like, if you're going to let some in, you got to let them all in. You can't say no, which means Barry Bonds gets in, Roger Clemens gets in, A-Rod should obviously have. Listen, Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire saved baseball in 1998.
And where are the owners? The owners should be out
100%. Instead, the Cubs won't even let Sosa back into the organization.
They
it's so sad. It's so sad because people forget, in 98, baseball was down from the 94 strike and interest was still not where it needed to be. And those two put baseball on the map that summer. And now it's almost as if people try to go out of the way and forget that, which makes no sense.
You put Pete Rose in?
So Pete Rose is an interesting case because we know about all the allegations. We know he's guilty. But on the flip side, he is the hit king. And it's hard to think that you've got someone who probably played the majority of his playing career without any incident, not getting in for his accomplishments on the field. I mean, whether he's in Cooperstown or not, when I hear the name Pete Rose, I think of a Hall of Famer. I really do. Not to mention all the immortals from the 20s and 30s, guys like Cobb and so on, that could have all been connected to scandals involving betting back then.
Sure.
And yet didn't get busted the way Rose got, and they're in the Hall of Fame, and Rose isn't. So yeah, I believe Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame. I as a person, Pete's a character. There's no doubt about it, and not the most likable person for some people. But you still have to realize there's a lot of people in the Hall that weren't likable, but put up incredible numbers. And Pete Rose he's Charlie Hustle. He's one of the greatest players ever to play the game, and it's really difficult to see somebody like that not be in Cooperstown.
Bonds still had to hit the home runs.
Absolutely.
I don't care what he did the night before the game.
And you got to realize, before he started taking allegedly what people say he took, he was already on pace to go into Cooperstown. Same with Clemens. That's the hardest part about those two is those guys were Hall of Famers before all this stuff happened.
So how does Clemens still get in the Hall?
So there are different committees now that look at different periods of the game and have a small group to vote them in. That's how Harold Baines got into the Hall of Fame. It's how some of these other players, like Gil Hodges, just got into the Hall of Fame because his eligibility was exhausted years and years ago, but he was just voted in. So I think it's called the Modern Game Committee. And what you do is you analyze 20 or so players who don't have eligibility anymore, but now can still get voted into the Hall. And I think there will become a time, sooner rather than later, where you'll start to see some of those names get into the Hall of Fame. I still want to see Thurman Munson get into the Hall of Fame. One of my favorites.
Why isn't he there?
Because he died in 79, came up in 70, and most people don't feel like he dominated over a long enough period of time to get in. Remember, when Clemente dies in the plane crash in 72, he had already been playing 17 years in the big leagues. So you already knew he was going into Cooperstown. He was towards the tail end of his career. Chances are Munson would have played at least another 5-6 seasons. His numbers had started to dip. So you wonder, had he not died in 79 in the crash, would he have had enough to put together through his whole body of work to get in? I always thought that, to me, Munson and Carlton Fisk were so similar in the 70s. And of course, Fisk got in. So it would be nice to see Munson eventually get into the Hall as well.
Yeah, it would. What do you think about this kid from El Paso, the baseball player?
I mean, Ivan Melendez is unbelievable. I mean, you
see the real deal?
Right now, I mean, you see what he's been able to do at Texas and in college. Some believe that his swing is a little long and it might not translate to the bigs. Listen, he's got ridiculous power. And he's in an organization that's not blocked to the big leagues. There's really nobody at first that you could say right now is going to keep him from getting into Arizona. So as long as he can show the ability to hit a baseball, which I think he will, and that power is legit, Ivan's going to be a terrific future slugger batting in the middle of the lineup for the Diamondbacks. And that's going to be fun too. Because you think about El Pasoans with baseball ties, right? Omar Quintanilla is probably...
I read your article. You had them all listed out.
Thank you. Omar is probably the one guy that, as a hitter, had a chance to have a terrific career. Gruzelanek, too. Mark made an all-star game.
Mark is a better basketball player.
He was. And the story is that, Don Haskins offered him a scholarship to play basketball at UTEP during that same time period, as he would have been on that 92 team, which ended up going to the Sweet 16 had he chosen basketball instead of baseball.
Yeah, and he could have contributed.
But I think Mark made the right choice. When you look at his body of work in his career.
He made the last hit in the old stadium.
Did he really?
Yeah, and he gave me the jersey and his cleats from that.
That's cool.
That game. Yeah, he's a great guy.
Absolutely.
I like him. So, who's gone the furthest outside of basketball? I mean, basketball, you got to put, Haskins at the top, then Archibald probably, or the 66 team, then Archibald. What do you think of the 66 team and everything that's gone on and,
Well, I think long overdue is the best way to put it. I mean, I'm happy they made the movie. I'm happy those guys were able to finally get what they probably should have had years ago. And I think that the historical significance needed to be, that story needed to be said and repeated, because in that time, you didn't have all black lineups in the South, especially, or even around college basketball. And the way, people, the interesting thing about the 66 team is this. We once brought up a discussion on the show. Which team was better, the 66 team or the 64 team? Because the 64 team, the only reason they didn't go deeper into the NCAA tournament was Barnes fouled out on some very questionable calls. And most will agree that Jim Bad News Barnes is the most dominant player ever to play at UTEP than Texas Western. Number 1 overall draft pick by the Knicks in 64. So you ask Hall of Fame coach Nolan Richardson, which team was better?
I've had this conversation with him.
He'll tell you the 64 team. He doesn't even blink.
All day long.
So it's interesting to me. Now, the one guy I would have loved to have heard really voice his thoughts on the two would have been Harry Flournoy, because he played in the 64 team and the 66 team, but unfortunately Harry's no longer with us.
Bobby Leslie played on 64, right?
I think so, yes.
Yeah, he was Haskins' first recruit.
I know.
And my basketball coach.
Oh, wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, well, we won state.
You're right. Which, by the way, you got. It took you years to get what you all deserve.
40 years.
I know. And then all of a sudden, you get the documentary and the celebration, which is incredible.
It was great. So, who do you think has done El Paso the best? And it's got to be baseball. I mean, I read your list. I saw your list.
When you say the best, how would you define the best?
Made
the most success?
Yeah.
Or the most impact?
Yeah, most impact.
From everybody that's ever played the game? I mean, it's tough when you go back and look at everybody. I'm biased. I know Butch Henry really well, and Butch was always one of my favorites. But if you look at career longevity and consistency and staying healthy, even though he didn't grow up in El Paso, it has to be Grusolani, right?
Has to be.
I mean, no, he played more than 10 years in the pros, made the All-Star team, was a very good defensive shortstop, athletic, hit for average. I mean, to me, Mark is probably the guy that would have been there. It's interesting. I always think to myself, what if Andy Cohen doesn't get hurt in 28 or 29 trying to break up that double play and breaking his leg? Because you think about his story, he replaces Rogers Hornsby. People don't understand. Rogers Hornsby is one of the all-time greats. The Giants trade Hornsby to give Andy Cohen second base. I saw a picture from 1928 offseason, and it was a presidential campaign picture from Getty Images. And Andy's in there with Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig. I mean, you're talking about the best players in New York. Andy Cohen is right there. He was the face of the Giants over those 2 seasons.
That's where I was going with the guy that's made the most impact. It's got to be one or both Cohens.
Well, the thing is this: the legacy that Andy Cohen started baseball at UTEP in the '60s.
God, don't you wish we had a team?
Every day I think about it. It's one of the most popular topics we get on the show. Can we ever bring baseball back? I'm hoping the answer is yes. But in order for that to happen, the athletic department has to start generating some money, Doug. And right now,
but how are we going to do that?
Winning. It's the key.
But so winning, it's a big circle. So you got to win. You got to get players.
Right.
People come here for 6 weeks. They check out with the NIL.
Yep.
Off they go. Who's going to stay in El Paso? What do we have to offer?
Well, I mean, look, and that's the thing. You know what? The easiest way to do this for football, here's what you have to offer: a chance to play. Because what would you rather do? Would you rather go to a Power 5, never play? Or would you rather have a chance to come here and be the next Aaron Jones? I mean, that to me
what
would be
about
the
what
best
Aaron
salesman.
did?
Incredible. Yeah.
And
really.
he's still doing it.
And he's one of the legitimate top 10 running backs.
With Devontae Adams going out, he's going to catch more balls this year, too.
I think so. It's going to be interesting to see how they do the timeshare with him and Dillon, because A.J. Dillon is so good, and they're such a different type of running back. One's a banger. The other one can just break free and just go, and just take off. But, I mean, look, you got Aaron Rodgers sticking around, despite all that drama.
He's a hard guy to like.
He is. But then again, he's a winner. I mean,
great quarterback.
Say what you want about his postseason. He's only won one Super Bowl, but the guy just knows how to win football games, and that's been so impressive.
What do you think about TB12?
As a Jets fan, there are certain individuals that it's kind of like Jordan. I couldn't stand him because I watched him beat the Knicks for so many years, but how do you not just respect him and think he's the greatest player you've ever seen? And Tom Brady's just a winner. He's one of these guys that wherever he goes, he wins, and it's contagious. And he's defying aging, which is also so impressive. And he is a likable guy. He's competitive. The similarities between him and Jordan are really interesting, except Jordan was such a more highly regarded draft pick than Brady was. But man, I mean, you could make a legitimate argument that when he retires, he's the greatest player ever to play the game.
Yeah. Are you watching The Captain?
I am, and we interviewed Randy, who is the director and filmmaker who put this together.
Yeah,
Randy, and he is just, it's such a cool piece. And the fact that after all these years, Jeter is giving access to tell his life story, considering how private and how guarded he was his whole career, really speaks volumes.
Yeah, but he's doing it.
Yeah,
Wetzel's going to be on next week.
Oh, fantastic! Is he coming into town?
I don't know if he is or not. If he does, I'll be sure to let you know. You know what we're going to do, though, Steve, is on September 7th, and we'd like you to participate, of course. Beto. Mm-hmm. Who has better Don Haskins stories than Beto?
Nobody. The man drove him around for years.
Okay, so Beto's always told me, and he and I are best friends, and he's always told me, nope, I'll never do it. I'll never do it on it. Well, he's doing it on September 7th.
Oh, nice.
That's the date Coach died.
Mm-hmm.
So he's going to come in here. We're going to try to do a celebration of Haskins' life, with some people that are just, around here in El Paso.
Oh, that's great.
So maybe you could help us with that.
Well, I'll say this. Highlight of my professional career, and I've been at this 27 years now, was the 3 years we were able to do the Don Haskins radio show. That was something that we always wanted to do after he retired. And the hardest part was his health was never good during those shows. But despite everything he was going through, battling cancer and dealing with all of his health problems, he always found a way to make it out to one of the locations we did the show. It was around people. We interviewed everybody you could imagine, former players, coaches, people around the community, and listening to Don Haskins' interview was phenomenal. In fact, when COVID hit, sports was shut down. People don't realize this. There was no sports the whole summer. And a lot of these radio shows had nothing to talk about.
How'd you survive?
We found every Don Haskins radio show.
That's right. You replayed them.
And we replayed them all. And we turned our 6 o'clock hour into the Don Haskins hour. We ended up running it for about a year. We had so much tape that we had a year's worth of shows.
You had a bunch from Wetzel that night over at my office.
We did, but we didn't use those.
You didn't?
Because those were interviews with Wetzel and Haskins for the book Glory Road. This was his radio show that he hosted, interviewing all of these different individuals, all the former players and coaches and El Pasoans.
And Beto would take him to that stuff, huh?
Absolutely. Beto took him everywhere. He was the one that drove him all over the place.
Yeah.
So that was great. So Beto was at every show. And just being a part of those, seeing what it did for Coach, being around people and kind of getting him out of where he was and just letting him in, because he just loved being around El Pasoans. But people don't understand this. He just liked engaging. And that to me is still the best, my favorite achievement of what I've been able to do all these years.
Yeah. So boiling down my little who's more impactful, you got to go with Andy Cohen and Don Haskins.
I once came out with an article in El Paso Inc. and I did the Mount Rushmore of El Paso sports.
Okay.
And the 4 individuals that I chose.
Let me see if I can guess them. Andy, Haskins, Nolan.
One more.
And Barnes?
Nope, I did Andy, Haskins, Nolan, and Don Maynard.
Don Maynard.
And it was tough.
Don Maynard was a misunderstood guy.
Absolutely. But lived in El Paso a long time. Pro Football Hall of Famer. One of the greatest receivers that ever lived. Joe Namath's favorite target. And a guy that really, until he moved out to Ruidoso, made El Paso his home. And I would agree. Misunderstood, yes, but a great guy to talk football with. Would call my show quite a bit to talk about UTEP and NFL, because he always liked to kind of get in and give us some of his thoughts. I thought a lot about Lee Trevino as my other member of the of Mount Rushmore. But because Lee left, still when he was relatively young and moved out to Dallas, that's why I went with Maynard instead. But it's a great list. And you know what? The funny thing is that one of those might end up, if you do this list in 10, 15 years from now, one of those might have to be bumped out for Aaron Jones when it's all said and done and his career comes to an end.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see kind of how things are playing out and how we have some really terrific athletes that have been so good to El Paso. I mean, Jennifer Hahn, one of the greatest, if not the greatest boxer ever to come out, and she has done so much for this community, and she has been so great with El Paso. And that's what I'm saying. We a lot of really
and Aaron's good to El Paso.
Great with El Paso, absolutely. And that's what I'm saying. There's gives back with the A&A All the Way Foundation. Just had the celebrity softball game here in this camp.
And it was successful.
It was successful. Absolutely. It's nice. I like it when NFL players bring camps. Years ago we had Ray Mickens do his camps. And Brian Young did his camps. And now it's all about Aaron Jones. So as long as the kids have an opportunity to learn from these these professional athletes, I think it's terrific.
But Coach did that for when I was a kid, New Mexico Military Institute. Haskins had a camp.
Well, you used to have a sleepaway camp at UTEP where you stayed in the dorms.
Yeah, you'd stay in the dorms up there. It'd be 5 days.
Oh, wow.
It was cool. And he'd bring in some of his other players. Nate was there. Archibald was there. When I was a kid, don't realize who he is.
Yeah, but now you look at it and you see
that
number 7 jersey up on the wall and you realize exactly who he is.
There he is.
I know.
So what else?
You tell me. I mean, I want to know, are you done collecting, or is there still more coming up in the memorabilia?
Still coming up. I'm doing a Yankee room right now.
Are you really?
Yeah, I'm redoing my conference room, all Yankees.
How far back do you go?
I've got...
you have Ruth?
I don't have Ruth and I don't have Gehrig. I have everybody else.
That's good. DiMaggio, Mantle.
Oh, yeah.
Do you have Munson?
I had Munson and I gave it away as a gift to a doctor in El Paso that loves Thurman Munson.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
It is awesome.
Now for you, and I don't want to be the one interviewing you at the end of your podcast, but I'm curious because I interview for a living and that's kind of what I enjoy doing so much. Do you enjoy collecting more or gifting things to people?
Gifting things is first, and the stories that I can tell about these guys. It's like B.B. King was a friend of mine, and B.B. would travel the country in a bus, so he'd have hours on to burn.
Yeah.
He used to call me and he'd say, "Beans?" He called me Beans. He goes, "What was the deal with that basketball team from your hometown?" And I said, "Well, Mr. King, it's the first time 5 African Americans started a basketball game." And he would laugh. He goes, "It sure as shit has happened a lot of times since then." Stuff like that. Stuff like that.
That is awesome. No, I would say, so one of my favorite pieces in my house, I've got a basketball that it was signed by Don Haskins at first, then Nolan Richardson. And then I started adding.
That's pretty good.
Then I started adding to it. And I ended up getting Bobby Knight on there. I ended up getting Larry Brown on there. And then I started just incorporating other coaches. Didn't get Tark, and I didn't get Lou Henson. I think there's a total of 5 on the basketball right now. I'm trying to remember who the 5th is. They're all Hall of Famers. And I'd love to get Coach K one of these days. And obviously I would like to get Roy Williams because UTEP beat him. I think that'd be kind of fun to have him on the ball with Haskins together. Yeah. But and of course guys like Jimmy Boeheim. It'd be good to get some of the older coaches on the ball. But it's neat to see some of the signatures all together. And I'd like to eventually just kind of grow that basketball and just make it the ultimate Hall of Fame coach.
Yeah, that's cool. I've got a basketball out there in the waiting room signed by Tim Hardaway. And it looks like it was written by a 6-year-old. Before Tim did his signature.
Well, Tim's interesting because when Tim first got out of UTEP, you could read every part of his name, and then as he's gotten older, the signatures kind of evolved a little bit more. So yeah, I mean, now when was that signed?
Tim signed that for me maybe 10 years ago.
Okay, that's still pretty good. I mean, you can read Hardaway nicely, but have you noticed that a lot of the athletes today, you have no idea what their name is because you cannot read their signature.
Right.
And it's almost like everybody's become a doctor.
Right.
Everybody now scribbles their autograph, and some don't even put their full names on there. There's a prospect for the Los Angeles Dodgers. His name is Miguel Vargas. He's going to be one of the next big things, okay? And he was just in Southwest University Park with the Chihuahuas. So my 10-year-old son, I said to him, we were at the game, I said, hey, see if you can get a bat from one of these guys. Call them out and just ask them for a bat. Who knows what they'll say? So he asks Vargas for his bat, and Vargas, I can't give you my bat. I need my bat. So he gets done swinging. At the end of the inning, he throws my son his batting gloves, which was really cool. So the next day, he goes back and gets those autographed. And the autograph just says Vargas. That's it, Vargas, not his first name. And I'm looking going, that's strange. I've never seen anybody just sign their last name as their autograph. Well, I did some checking, went on eBay, and I looked for his autographed cards. Every single autograph that Miguel Vargas has signed is all Vargas. That's it. Wow. So it's consistent with everything else, but I find that fascinating. The man doesn't put his first name on there. It's just his last name. Yeah. Imagine if you signed everything Rutter, and that was it. Doug doesn't even exist in the autograph world. It's just your last name.
Neville told me the other day that, he's involved with San Antonio kids, and he told me that people walk up to him and say, can I have your autograph? And he goes, who am I? And they go, George Gervin? He goes, no, I'm Neville Shedd.
That's hilarious. Does he still sign for him?
Yeah, Neville signs, yeah. No
now,
problem.
With everything you've got here in your whole collection, do you have one piece that is your pride and joy that you like more than anything else?
Yeah. Yeah, I've got a baseball signed by John Lennon.
Oh, wow.
On the night he got killed.
Really?
And
what's the story behind that?
Okay, so the photographer is a guy named Bob Green, and I got a letter from Bob saying, I took the picture of Yoko Ono and John Lennon, and he's standing there with the baseball signing it. And then I had the ball, the markings and everything. I had all that certified. And then so Green's here, Yoko Ono and John are here, and then back here is Mark David Chapman.
Oh my God.
And 2 hours later, he's going to kill John Lennon.
Unbelievable.
So there's a possibility that it's one of the last 10 autographs that John signed.
Could be even less than that because.
And so Yoko wants the baseball, and I told her, that's great. Give me something of John's.
Sure.
She says no, and I said, well, then I'm going to keep my baseball.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair. She probably still has a lot of John's.
Can you imagine? Who cares, right?
That's right.
I mean, give him a hat or something, or.
How did Yoko even reach out to her in the first place and say she wanted the ball?
She saw it on a news article that was done about me that made its way to New York. And she saw it, and somebody asked me the question like you just did, and I answered it like I did. And she inquired. She wanted to see the pictures, and she wanted to see the ball, and all that stuff. But eBay's kind of ruined it for us. I mean, when I was a kid growing up, man, I mean, it was go to the Sun Kings games, go to the Diablos games. Remember when the Diablos were a AA affiliate of Arizona? And Johnson came down here and pitched, and Carlos Quentin played here.
That's right.
All those guys played here. It was something else.
It was fun. It was
so what's the deal with the Chihuahuas?
So to me, I mean, I absolutely love what we've seen with the Chihuahuas. And I'll tell you something else from an autograph standpoint. They've been terrific. They sign all the time. The visiting team signs.
Do you know the other?
I didn't. I only got to see him once. It's funny. My brother's kids got Cano on a baseball, which was good. But I heard nothing but amazing things about Cano. I heard he was signing a ton of autographs, taking pictures. Just as nice as somebody could possibly be was Robinson Cano, which is great. It's a shame because I was hoping that Fernando Tatis Jr. would rehab in El Paso next week.
Yeah.
But we're hearing now that he's going to go to San Antonio before he goes back to San Diego.
Yeah, that's what I hear.
So it's a shame because he was never here. Tatis went from AA to the big leagues, has never been in El Paso and worn a Chihuahuas jersey. So that would have been something else for at least some El Pasoans to have come down to the ballpark next week and say they had a chance to see Fernando Tatis.
Sure. Jr. What about the crowds?
Great.
You think they're good?
They are. I mean, got to realize something. I remember those Diablos days towards the end, and there used to be 500 people going to Cohen Stadium to watch them play. There was nobody there.
Right.
The ballpark looks as good now as it did when it opened. They've done a terrific job taking care of that, and the crowds are solid. Now, during the week, if you go on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, it might not be very many people because those are tough nights, but Friday, Saturday, Sundays, those are still, and we're 9 years into this, and they still pack those crowds for games. So, I give Mount Star a lot of credit, Doug, because they've done a terrific job not falling off like we all expected them to once the novelty of AAA ball started to wear off.
Right. And soccer?
Soccer is a different crowd, different animal. Loyal, die-hard fans that are with them through the thick and the thin. It's been an interesting 4 years because Mark Larry did an amazing job before he went to Indianapolis in Indy 11. John Hutchinson has had kind of ups and downs. Started out rough, then he got it going again, and then last couple of matches they haven't been able to score. So I'm interested to see how they finish the season. But if you go to the crowds at Chihuahuas baseball versus Locomotive baseball, it's a completely different animal.
Really?
Yes.
Totally different fan base.
Unbelievable, but yes.
So I guess you think we're going to have a sports, the arena is going to be a soccer. I know Mrs. Foster wants a big soccer team here.
So I would love to see a multi-purpose outdoor facility in El Paso. I started thinking about this, right? And first off, there's nothing wrong with the Haskins Center. In fact, what I'd like to see them eventually do is get rid of about 2,000 seats, add suites and luxury and club areas, and just renovate it and keep it the way it is. Because I don't really think that there's anything wrong. I'd like to see the upgrades take place, maybe more padded seats, premium spots, but for the most part, that facility has withstood the test of time.
See, I wanted them to upgrade Cohen Stadium. I thought,
Isn't it interesting how quickly Cohen became outdated?
Yeah.
When Cohen was built, it was state-of-the-art in 1990. And then 5 or 6 years later, all these new minor league parks started getting built with a completely different look, and suddenly Cohen Stadium was outdated.
But we could have put about $10 million into Cohen Stadium, and it would have been something.
100%. But at the same time, the trend is downtown. You look at that. I missed the original view. The original view when Southwest University Park first opened was incredible. You had the mountains, you had the whole downtown look, and then now you've seen all these hotels start coming up that's taken away the view, which is a shame. But as far as I'm concerned, I won't complain about getting rid of City Hall to bring in Southwest University Park. To me, it's as nice a minor league stadium as you're going to find anywhere in the country.
How do you find a better one?
You don't. You absolutely don't. But you go back to the outdoor multi-purpose. You could hold it. You could hold a soccer-specific stadium. But I've always wanted an amphitheater in El Paso. You go to Phoenix, you go to Albuquerque, you go to these outdoor amphitheaters. You get all these great shows and concerts that are perfect. We don't have that here. You've got the Sun Bowl, you've got the Haskins Center, and then you've got the Coliseum. But you don't have that outdoor venue that seats about 15 to 20 that could be a beautiful in between for the large Sun Bowl and maybe the Haskins Center. I kind of wish we had that.
Yeah. The one in Albuquerque is great.
I've seen shows there a lot.
Yeah, who have you seen?
I saw, Earth, Wind and Fire in Chicago, and then I saw Kiss there, and that was a great concert.
Kiss
took my son to Kiss. No, actually, saw Kiss at the
amphitheater.
Yeah, the amphitheater. Great show.
Well, that's great.
So a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's great. How old are your kids?
Just one. He's 10 years old.
That's it, huh?
That's it.
What's he doing?
You name it, he's doing it.
He likes it all.
He's done. He's got the basketball camp with the UTEP camp this week. He plays baseball. He's taking guitar lessons. Got him his first guitar, which was a Les Paul. He got it autographed by the lead singer of Ghost. So he's got his first signed guitar. Could add that to your collection over here. And with him, I don't know what he's going to do. He's got so many interests. He's a good little athlete, but he has that musical ability too. So it's going to be fun. To see what he really gravitates to the next few years.
So be thinking about what your favorite Haskins items are.
I'll tell you right now, my favorite Haskins item is, the movie poster of Glory Road signed, I love. But I also have a piece of the court that he personalized and autographed to me.
It came out a plaque?
Yes.
Yeah, I've got one of those.
Now, when I bought the plaque, it was unautographed, but at the time we were doing the show, so I brought it to him and he signed it for me and personalized it, and that's really a neat piece.
I tracked one of those down for Beto. He didn't have one.
No, very nice.
So I
They're hard to find.
I tracked it down. It was signed.
I would love to get my hands on the 66 program, an authentic program. That would be something nice to have. I've got the Sports Illustrated, and a good friend of mine gave me as a gift the Sporting News from that 66 year, which is really cool. But it would be nice to add the original program from 66 to the collection.
9 out of 10 games, Texas, Western Kentucky. Who wins?
You know, I don't say Kentucky beats Texas Western. People underestimate how good the Miners were that year and how tough they were. I think 9 out of 10 times, you might end up getting 5 times Texas Western, 4 times Kentucky. I think it'd be closer than people think. It's not, I wouldn't say 9 out of 9 Texas Western or 9 out of 9 Kentucky. I think they split it. They're pretty even. I just think that Adolph Rupp underestimated the Miners. They came out ready to play that night. And, you know, if you really look at the teams, this was a team that only lost 1 game the whole season. And you talk to the players and Coach Haskins about it, he never felt they were ready to play that game against Seattle. They could have been undefeated.
You ever talked to Pat Riley about it?
I haven't. I only met Pat once. It was when I was in college. He was coaching the Knicks. One of the more intimidating individuals I've ever met in a post-game interview, but never really had a chance to sit down and talk to Pat about the game.
Yeah. So I had a San Diego Rockets jersey that was Pat's.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got a connection with the Heat, and so I had it set up. I sent her the jersey. She was going to get Pat to sign it. She calls me and says, Coach wants to know where you got this jersey. And I said, I got it in San Diego at a sale there. And she goes, well, he didn't have one. And I said, yeah, he does. She goes, no, he doesn't have one of these jerseys. I said, he does have one of those jerseys. She goes, no, he does. I said, yes, he does. I said, give him the jersey that I just gave you. And I said, tell him it's his. If he wants to sign it, whatever he wants to do with it, it's his jersey. 2 days later, I get a phone call from Pat Riley. And I'll tell you, I can get a better seat at a Heat game than I can at a UTEP game.
I believe it.
You know, he takes good care of me. But yeah,
so you've had a chance to meet him over the years.
Oh yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, all it takes is getting a jersey. But that's what I'm saying, Doug. You get more enjoyment giving your items, your collection, and sharing it and gifting it to people. And in that situation, gifting it to Pat.
And you know, given it's like I told you about Lou a minute ago.
Yeah.
That baseball is paramount to Lou. I mean, it's
sure.
You know, and you. And, you know, versus some of these other collectors we talked about, they do it for the collecting. They don't do it for the love of the game.
It means something.
Yeah.
It really does. It's personal.
I mean, it's wonderful to give somebody something. Absolutely. It's like that day I gave that coin thing to that girl. I mean, it's fantastic.
I know.
To do that.
It's incredible. And Marina cherishes that because she didn't have that piece, and that's a piece of her dad. It's history. And,
Which is what it is.
Well, the sad part is, Andy gave away all his stuff, and you can't find it in town anymore.
Yeah.
Nobody has it.
Yeah. And it's not an eBay find.
No, you don't see it.
It's nothing. I've got an Andy ball, team ball, and a Sid team ball. I don't even know what teams they are, but I got both of them. So what's the future of El Paso sports?
I think it's bright when you look at everything right now.
Are we doing in basketball any of these AAU teams that go up and
yes.
We're all-star teams?
Now, there's things we need, okay? You said the future of El Paso sports. We need better baseball fields for the kids. We need a complex for basketball and even volleyball so we can start seeing travel tournaments here and not having everybody to travel out of town. To me, the biggest
Where would you put that travel for that game? Where would you house it? Would you do it at the Haskins Center?
When you say, when you're talking about travel, you mean?
Well, you're saying, we can attract these travel teams.
So first off, you got to build these complexes. I mean, one of my brothers lives in California, okay? And his son and daughter play in what was the Mamba basketball facility. It was the place Kobe was going to with his daughter when his helicopter crashed. He was a part owner of it, okay? It's about 5 minutes from where he lives, from my brother. And it is 10 basketball courts, along with, I believe, they might even have volleyball, and then they've got a little bit of other things as well. And it's one of the nicest things in California. But you think about it, they're building baseball fields, basketball complexes all over the country, and we haven't. And you think about the 2012 quality of life bond issue, they missed on that. They missed on the kids, because ultimately, had they incorporated land and facilities to put baseball, softball complexes together in El Paso, and basketball and volleyball complexes. You could be bringing in so much money in tourism dollars instead of having to take it out of town because you got to go someplace else to play ball against quality opponents.
And you got to go somewhere else to see a concert.
Yes.
9 out of 10 times.
And that's a shame too. It shouldn't be that way. Although concerts are getting out of hand. I don't know about you. I tried to get in on the Springsteen tour last week, and when I started seeing $6,000 to go watch a concert, which should cost you probably about $250, $300, and say you're spending $6,000, I mean, who can afford that?
How do you feel about being in a big crowd like that?
So I just got back from New York a month ago, and I was at the Garden to go see Billy Joel. Took my wife and son. We were on the floor, 35 rows from the stage, right by the soundboard, center shot at the concert. Had an amazing time. Didn't, worry about the masking as much when we got in, and apparently nobody else did. And we spent a week in New York. We got there on a Wednesday. The show was on a Friday. Left on a Wednesday. I test positive for COVID on Sunday after I got back.
Wow.
Now, did it happen at the concert? We don't know. Could have happened anywhere. Could have happened anytime.
5 days and you were better?
I was feeling better 2 days after I tested positive. Symptoms were okay. Better now than obviously, and I avoided this for 2 years. But I guess the point is that, to me, there are some people out there that will never look at concerts the same way because of COVID and what they could catch.
Right.
But that was a bucket list item for me. I saw Billy Joel in '94 with Elton John at the Alamo Dome when I was in college. My dad was with me. 4-hour concert, unbelievable. But I'd never seen Billy by himself. And I said to my wife and son, you know what? We need to go to Madison Square Garden.
How nice.
We bought tickets, got them, and didn't have to pay a markup. We bought them face value when they first came on sale. Playing the trip around it, went to Yankee Stadium on Sunday afternoon to go watch them beat the Cubs. Saw the Mets 2 days later at Citi Field to go play the Brewers. Good trip.
Yeah.
Worth it.
So you mentioned Mamba. I happened to watch last night an interview that Alex Rodriguez did with Kobe Bryant.
Oh, wow.
And Alex is the interviewer.
That's interesting.
And he asked Kobe, so what's the deal behind helicopters, you and helicopters? And it was chilling to sit there and watch Kobe talk about why he took helicopters. Mm-hmm. And to think that,
Well, first off, that should have been avoided, as we all know. But the problem is, when Kobe wants to go someplace, Kobe was going no matter what.
Put him in a Ferrari and drive.
I know. But that's unfortunate, and it's unfortunate that was really the...
Where does Kobe rank?
A good question. I still say Jordan's the greatest of all time. We did our top 10.
But
top 10.
You say that, greatest of all time. You're keeping in mind Bill Russell.
I know.
Jerry West, the Haskins,
Chamberlain,
all that.
Yep, absolutely. Oscar Robertson. Listen, there's a place for everybody, but at the same time, Jordan is one of those guys that between the competitiveness, the ability, transcending the sport, Russell is in my top 5 of all time.
So they sent Jordan to play baseball.
Yep.
Was that a penalty for gambling that they couldn't suspend him from?
We'll never know, will we? We'll never really know the truth behind
Why else would he go play, single?
Why leave after 3 straight championships and just suddenly leave one of the greatest dynasties of all time to try a sport that you've never played since high school?
And then come back and win 3 more.
I know. That's true. We'll never know.
So who are your top 10? You got them off the top of your head?
Listen, in particular order, it's tough, but you just go with the top 10 greatest
just
of all
top
time.
10, yeah.
I put Jordan, Chamberlain, Russell, LeBron. In my mind, has to be in the top 10. Kobe is in the top 10. And then you go a little deeper into the next 5, and I have Oscar Robertson. He's the human triple-double.
Yep.
You got to put him in the top 10. Interestingly enough, when you go through some of the other players from the 50s and 60s, who else would make it? I'm not sure. Got to have Magic. Got to have Bird. You got to. We mentioned Kobe. He's got to be in that conversation as well. Some will say Shaq. I don't know. That's a tough one. Probably the most dominant physical player in the history of the NBA. Does he make the top 10 all time? I'm not 100% sure about that.
Look, you got a lot of competition at the center spot.
You're right. I don't think Dr. J gets in, but he's one of my personal favorites of all time. I mean, Dr. J is he was kind of like Jordan before Jordan, just because he revolutionized the game of basketball. Jabbar's got to be in there because you think about what he was able to do, the all-time scoring leader and one of the most consistent players.
How about Maravich in college?
Unbelievable. Could be the greatest college player of all time.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. I've got in my best college players of all time. Bill Walton's one of them. College.
Well, I mean, Walton, just like Jabbar, played for he played for Wooden during that great run. And you think about it,
And who's
Texas Western kind of interrupted the
I was
run.
going to say who's right in the middle of it.
They interrupted everything.
Yeah.
They were dominant prior to, and they had Jerry Lucas on those early '60s teams, and they were winning national titles. And in '66, Alcindor was a freshman, and in those days, freshmen couldn't play varsity. So, we'll never know about Alcindor versus Texas Western because the following year, they never got to meet up.
Right.
And speaking of what if Bobby Joe plays that whole 67 season for Texas Western? What happens then? We'll never know the answer.
Yeah. How did Wooden pull it off? And the answer is money and players.
Yeah, I mean, that's the
Has
one
to
thing. Yeah, you think about it. He had a dynasty back in the days when there weren't dynasties like that.
Yeah,
and there were players getting paid. It wasn't nearly what it's turned into all these years later.
Right. So the NIL, it goes a long way, and I'm not a fan of the one year Kentucky players, 2-year NBA multimillionaire. I wish
One and done now. The one and done.
I wish they'd stay in school, but they're not.
I agree with you, but if you think about it, what everybody's dealing with the NIL right now, John Calipari's been doing that the last 20 years.
Yeah,
it's pretty amazing to think about how many one and done teams he's had to deal with, and now. Obviously, there's a lot of coaches. Coach K didn't like it, so he stepped down. Now, would he have stepped down anyway? That's debatable. But the game has changed, and I don't think a lot of these great coaches like Boeheim and like Krzyzewski, they don't want to have to deal with
start over every year.
No, they don't want to do that. So they want it out because they realize that if they don't get out now, the end of their legacy is not going to be nearly what they expected it to be.
And NIL hurts a team like UTEP.
Doesn't help. It doesn't help. It makes you change the way you're thinking about it.
We need a TV contract. We don't have a TV contract.
Well, unfortunately, Conference USA is part of the problem.
Yeah,
big problem. And I think that if
where would you like to see us?
Mountain West.
Yeah, no question.
No question. No question. It's a shame that in '98 they didn't get in. They were on the outside looking in because I always felt like they belonged with those core teams because they were all part of the WAC for so long. And I'd like to see if the Mountain West. There's rumors that we could see Fresno State and San Diego State go into the Pac-12 if Washington and Oregon don't leave, and the Pac-12 looks to replace USC and UCLA with 2 California schools. Well, then the Mountain West is going to need to replace those two, and UTEP hopefully by then will be on the short list.
You would hope so.
I would.
You would hope so. I mean, otherwise, UTEP sports is really challenged.
Well, you know what you got to do? You got to keep winning. Whether you win whatever's left of Conference USA or whatever league they're in, you win. Hopefully enough fans go to these games and enjoy it, and then you build your brand that when you are ready to move, you add more to the mix.
What kind of football season are we going to have?
I mean, you look at the schedule right now, Doug. There's no reason why they can't win 8 games. Really, no reason.
Yeah.
Got to stay healthy. That's the key. Number one, you got to stay healthy, and you got to have some balls break your way. But they got a very favorable conference schedule. And outside of Oklahoma, who won't be like your usual Oklahoma because they're going through transition with the new coaching change and some of the new players. They get Boise here, they get North Texas here. There's a lot of reasons why UTEP should be able to come in and do very well. When you've got 9 starters on offense and 7 on defense, that's 16 out of 22. That's a very good veteran team.
Yeah. Hey, did you get your bear statue figured out?
Hopefully it's coming sooner rather than later. Maybe you can sell a couple of these pieces of memorabilia and we can have you bankroll these for me.
Well, that'd be great.
It'd be awesome. It's coming soon, though. I got to tell you. That's going to be fun. And hopefully before you know it, we'll be able to get a 7-foot bronze statue of Don Haskins outside of the arena. That's kind of the goal right now. And I've been working on this for a couple of years. And now it seems like things are going well. We just got to get it financed. So if any of your buddies are watching this podcast and they want to reach out to you and help out, have them talk to me and we'll see what we can do.